Hey, it's Al Angelo, back again from A Plus Racing. Hey, I got the head back. The high request of how do you replace the Miata head in the car. So I got the head back. It had some low compression on number 4 back here. It was like 60, this one was 120. Machine shop said the intake valves actually wore out back here. That's wrong with it. So it needed a valve job. So we did a valve job to it. I got it all back. Who do I use? I use Moore's in Auburn, California. He does a great job. You can give them a call. Good people down there, fast turnaround, helped me out for 10 or more years now. So Moore's Machine Shop in Auburn, California. All right, so in order to go back together, and this is not easy, all right? This is not the easiest job. This is not the easiest way of doing this. The easiest way of doing it is just pull the engine out. I can have that engine out in 30 minutes. It took us a while to get the head off, but you guys requested that you want to know how do you do the cylinder head in the car, so I'm obliging you. All right, so one of the first steps I need to do is I need to get the head back together, okay? So it's missing the cam seals here, so I need to put cam seals in. I need to put the intake manifold on, the injectors, the thermostat housing has got to go back on it. So we got a few parts that we got to put back on it first. So let's just go ahead and start off with that. So I've got my injector rail right here. So this is going to be the first part to go back on. So I've got my table kind of laid out with the parts I'm going to need. I'm going to use a little bit of this. This is what assembly lube that we used to use back in the day when I built automatic transmissions. Basically, it's Vaseline. So I'm just going to take a little bit of it and put it on these seals right here on the injector seals. I just don't want to like nick one of these or have a problem when I go back and bind one up. So it's like I said, I know you probably don't have this automatic transmission assembly lube laying around under the sink. So you can just use Vaseline. It's the same thing. All right. And so here are the bolts that hold it all together. And they got these little spacers. Okay. I'm going to set those right here. All right. Okay, so here it is, and you can see here's the injector holes right here where it's going to line up. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get this set to where those injectors line up in there. And if I don't seat them all the way down right now, well, they did. It's okay, because I still need to put these little spacers in there. These get lost all the time, so you want to make sure that you hang on to these, all right? And they go right underneath there like that, okay? So there are 3 of them. So I always make sure that I put these in a special spot when I'm not using them, because it seems like every time you build an engine, you're short one. All right, so those 3 are sitting there, and I'm going to get my ejectors lined up. Okay, and I can tell I'm not down all the way, so somebody's not cooperating here. There it goes. All right, so if you come look on this side, get real tight, you can see that the injector rail is all the way down on top of my spacers. And that's what I need to be. I don't want one like popped up, because if I go to tighten it up, I'm going to bend something, or I could break the spacer, or more than likely break the end of the injector off, and I don't want to do that. Okay, so these are 12 millimeter. They probably get torqued to 15 foot-pounds. So I just snug them up with this. Like that. Okay. All right. So the next step, if you come around to this side, so we're going to be working on this side, is to go ahead and put the intake manifold back on. All right. So here's the intake manifold here. And I've got a new intake manifold gasket. I always recommend you replace the intake manifold gasket. I really try to avoid, I mean, if I'm at the racetrack and I don't have one, then I don't have one. But, here we are at the shop. Definitely going to put a new one on there. All right. And on the 1/8, they only really go on one way, and it's not a problem. If it was a 1/6, they can go on a couple of different ways. And so you need to be really careful about that. All right, so as we can see here, the intake looks pretty bad. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a couple minutes and clean up this intake so it's nice and clean. Clean out the runners a little bit. some brake clean, wipe it all down, and then I'm going to show you the tricks on putting the intake manifold back on. All right, so we'll be back in just a minute. All right, we're back. Okay, so I've got the head tilted up this way, so you can come over here and take a look at it. I got my new gasket in place. My injectors are in and tight. We've got the intake manifold cleaned up pretty good, and I've got my bolts ready to go on, or my nuts ready to go on. All right, so here we go. Let's add this to it. So this is a two-piece intake. When you order the intake manifold gasket, they might ask you, do you need an upper or lower? This would be the upper, the one that if you were to split this top part. I normally don't do that. I only split it if I need to clean it, but I don't split it in order to do this job. So we're just going to set this right over those studs like that. Okay. Now, if I do it now, because if I tried to bolt the head in the car first and then I try to put this on, it's really hard to get to the intake bolts. But if you look over my shoulder right here, it's really easy to see all of the bolts right down through these slots. So these slots are strategically placed so that you can get to the nut, the stud on every one of them. Okay, so Mazda really had their engineers figured out on this one. So I'm just going to add these nuts to it. And I'll show you a little trick I use when I do those top ones, because I can't reach in there with my finger. All right, so what I do is I take, and I've showed you this trick once before, I take a piece of paper and I stick it over the socket, and then I just push the nut into it like that. Okay, so now I can go down and I can put that nut right on top of that stud, and then I pull it out like that. Okay, that's how I do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all of these nuts on there. Oops. And then I'm going to torque these to about 15 pounds, and then we're going to move forward. So there's that one. All right, so we'll be right back when I get this torqued up. We'll go to the next step. See you in a minute. Okay, we're back. We got the intake torqued down. All the bolts are in it. That part's done. I'm working on the thermostat housing here right now. This is a good time to inspect the thermostat housing little tubes right here. Sometimes they get rusted and they get screwed up. So these ones are in pretty good shape. You can take a wire wheel to them, kind of clean them up. Kids did a bang-up job cleaning that up. All right, so that looked great. So we're going to go ahead and set our O-ring in here. And like I said, back the other video I showed you, sometimes these O-rings are a little tricky to stay in place. And so if it is going to give me trouble, then a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just put a little silicone around it. So I got some gray silicone here. I'll put a bead around it like that. Make sure that it sticks down inside there. Down in that groove. Okay, looks like we got it. All right, so this is just going to sit right in there like that. And I got this one started. And I'm kind of pulling on it so that I don't squish my silicone yet because I'm not ready. And so I got this one started. Okay, so now I'm going to push it in. And then I'm going to finish tightening these up so that way that O-ring didn't pop out of there. Man, that O-ring pops out. You got to take the whole front of the engine apart to make it right again. All right. And I got these in there. These would be getting torqued to 15 pounds. Now would be a good time to put a new thermostat in there if you're running a thermostat, and I recommend that you do. We already put a brand new one in here. Okay, so the next step is to go ahead and put the thermostat housing on the rear. So let me get that part cleaned up and I'll get the gasket and I'll be right back. Yeah, here we go. All right, so we're back. We're on the back side of the head right now, and I'm going to go ahead and put on this rear thermostat housing. This is where, if this was a front-wheel drive vehicle, it would have been using this as the thermostat, but since this is rear-wheel drive, it doesn't do that. So front-wheel drive, this would be used for a thermostat. All right, so I got a new gasket here. It's the same gasket as the thermostat in the front, and they usually have a little stick-em on them, and I set it on there like that. Okay, and then this goes like that. Pretty simple. So we're just basically, this is about the end of putting the head back together. Pretty much mostly I've been using a 12 millimeter here. Okay. And I'm going to give those a little snug down. There we go. Okay, this is the ECT. This is actually the temp gauge that the computer uses to give its information on what's going on with the coolant temp. So make sure that you don't break this when you put the engine in or drop the head in, that it doesn't get broken. We got a problem here with the EGR tube. Looks like it broke off here a while back. Looked like somebody tried to weld it. So we're going to go ahead and replace that right now. And then I think we're about ready to drop this head back on, and oh, the fun is going to begin. All right, we'll be back. Okay, I'm back. And we're going to drop the head on. So we got everything torqued, everything's ready to go, and this is going to be the tricky part, all right? So here's what I've done. I've done this in the past. This is the standard head bolt, all right? So what I do is I make a special tool out of an extra one. And what that means is that I take and I cut the head of it off, all right? And then I cut a slot into it. So come in real close so you can see what I did. All right. So I took a regular head bolt, cut the head off, and I cut a slot in it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to thread this into the block where the alignment dowels are at. So I have two of them. So if we look on the engine, I already have one. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and thread this one in. And I don't thread it very far. I just thread it in a couple of turns. All right. And then I'm going to take my head gasket. I have a brand new head gasket. If you torque this head gasket down and you squish it, it's done. Okay, so this will only be used one time. I got to make sure I put it on the right way. Sometimes they say top or something like that, but never on a Miata. I only see that on other cars. All right, so this sits like this, and I'm going to show you how I know that I got it on here right. You see right here, that's the oil feed hole. Okay, so that's where the oil pressure comes up to lubricate all the camshafts and everything, and this is a return. Or, no, this is another bolt. Nope, this is a return. And so, if I put it on backwards, it still fits, but the hole's covered up. See that? Okay, so we can't have that. All right, so we want to make sure that we put the head gasket on the correct way. What I like to call the right way. All right, so like that. Okay, so the plan here is to go ahead and line up those pins that I made with the two holes that they correspond on the head, and then slide the head down. So the reason why I'm doing this is because I have to make sure that that head lands perfectly straight onto these dowels that are sticking up out of the head that help align the head gasket. I don't want the head to be on here crooked, and then we torque it down and it screws up the head and everything gets messed up. So this is kind of the tricky part here when we're going to drop this on. So we're going to go ahead and get prepared. We're going to get some more light in here and that kind of things, and then we'll be right back dropping the head on. Okay? So we'll be right back.